I did drugs once, then I started a business. I was anti-racist, then I started a business. I said trans rights once, then I started a business.
I wouldn't dare try it. I don't even want the possibility of becoming addicted to something that is going to make me physically dependent upon it.
So don't drink coffee. By the way, cheers, everybody. All right, let's see who's pro-drug and who's anti-fuck. Who's anti-fuck? Who's anti-drug? Let's do it. Let's see who's pro-fuck and who's anti-fuck. So, this Vosh-looking guy, hippie Vosh over here, probably pro-drug, though maybe there's a chance that he's not. You can never truly tell. Well, we already know that she's anti-drug because of the little preview clip. I'm thinking that this person is anti-drug. That's just the taste that I get from my initial inspection. It's hard to say where we go with this guy, with this fella. I'm gonna say pro-drug for now. Anti-drug, she looks like a conservative white woman, though it's entirely possible that I'm wrong. But these shoes and these capris are sus. Anti, pro, anti, so pro. Okay, I think we might be right, but let's see how it plays out.
My name is Kayla, and I'm a recovery advocate.
Hey, one for one.
My name is Chris, and I'm a cannabis advocate.
2.
Hi, my name is Devin, and I'm fascinated with mental health.
My name is Juan Camilo González Ochoa Trios de la Rueda, for the Gringos JC, and
Hello.
I am pro these things that grow out of the ground and make us shift our perspective.
My name is Key.
Can we hear that again?
Grow Rueda.
I'm fascinated with
Let's
mental
hear that
health.
again. Listen, everybody.
My name is
Listen
Juan
in.
Camilo González Ochoa Trios de la Rueda, for the Gringos JC, and I am pro these things that grow out of the ground and make us shift our perspective.
My name is Key. I am honestly middle ground.
My name is Kiki Dexter, and I'm here pro marijuana.
First statement is, I or someone I love has been addicted to drugs.
Hey, my mom is a chronic caffeine drinker and cigarette nicotine smoker. What's up, Mom? A lot of people in my family are dependent on nicotine and caffeine. I myself am slowly but surely developing a caffeine dependency. However, I do try to be very careful and limit my intake. I know of people who have had difficulties with alcohol, but nothing more really than that. I mean, I know a bunch of weed addicts, but, that's neither here nor there, so,
My dad is a very adamantly recovering heroin addict. I think he first got addicted when he was like 20, 21. It was the influx of drugs into the cities in the 80s. It still affects his life.
I had a physical dependence on prescription anti-anxiety medication, Klonopin specifically, for like 7 years. I went to treatment like 3 years ago, and eventually found my way back. I would consider myself
Pharmaceuticals can be
sober.
kinda
I've
whack.
been sober for like 2.5 years.
Alcohol played a big role in my life. Marijuana played a big role in my life. I did notice going into my 20s that the pattern, that I do have a propensity to want to get fucked up. Now, I don't smoke, I don't drink, or at least that's my intention. But there comes a time when it's like, cool, I think I could go for a nice LSD trip in the woods. That'd be nice.
People often become emotionally dependent on recreational drugs.
Well, that truly is an interesting prompt. Without the data on hand, I would have to guess that I don't fucking know, dude. It depends on what your definition of recreational drugs is, because there aren't very many aside from nicotine, caffeine, and alcohol that are really recreationally available, because heroin, cocaine, meth, all this kind of shit, you can do recreationally. I don't know if recreational drugs entails legal. I'm not too sure. That's where my problem comes in. Let's see what we get.
Emotionally dependent on recreational drugs.
I like the hippies we got out here.
I think they do. For example, I had a great childhood, but I was sexually abused. Nobody knew what was going on. By the time I was 14, I was using whatever I could get my hands on to deal with the emotional turmoil that I was dealing with inside. And when we're so young, we have traumatic events, or we have these situations and these circumstances that stick with us, and we don't know how to process them, and so we reach out to whatever's closest to us: food addiction, drug addiction.
Never heard of emotional dependence on drugs. I've heard of chemical dependency. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's weird wording as well. I would assume they mean something along the lines of, oh, I whenever I'm feeling down or whenever I'm feeling some type of way, I indulge in this recreational drug. And at that point, you build up a dependency where, like, even if you don't feel as bad, you still, like, get the craving for it or some nonsense like that. But I figure the two would go hand in hand.
I think it's good to establish a distinction between recreational use and habitual use. Because that's one thing I heard you guys talking about, and I don't feel that people really become emotionally dependent when they're recreationally using it. When they're habitually using it, when they're using it to solve problems, then it does become an issue because you're not dealing with balance at that point. I mean, you're tipping one way on the scale, you're clearly gonna affect other areas and get sick.
I believe drugs are safe in moderation.
I believe drugs are safe in moderation. True. It is all dependent on the way that you use them, the kind of person you are in terms of your mental state. I feel like that most people of sound mind can very easily partake in even very chemically addictive drugs in moderation, though the definition of moderation changes from drug to drug. You can use cannabis on a fairly regular basis and not have much of a problem, but obviously using heroin in moderation, that, like, the time between you intaking that substance becomes much bigger. The time frame just expands incredibly. The founding moral principle of our drug program was there's no good drugs or bad drugs, only healthy use of drugs and unhealthy use of drugs. That makes sense. Like I said, it's all dependent on the person who's using it and the way that their brain works.
Moderation? I don't know what I think. Actually, I agree. I think so. What's up, guys? This was a hard one for me. I just had to hone in on that word moderation. Like, if I'm smoking once or twice a week, that's fine. But if I'm smoking every day of my life, every second I get up and I can't function, then of course, that's when there's a red line. I wouldn't say, like, using things like heroin or cocaine, like using that in moderation. I think that's just harmful. But if we're talking about the subject of marijuana and that use, then yeah.
She brings up heroin and cocaine or meth in moderation, and I think it makes sense to what I said before. Like, I think it is technically possible to use these kinds of very addictive drugs in moderation, but that the definition of moderation changes from drug to drug, like I said before. So cannabis, you can do it on a fairly regular basis. Alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, you can do on a regular basis, and usually you'll be fine. However, something like cocaine, at that point, moderation means you do cocaine on day A, and then day B, the second time you take it, is like maybe a couple weeks later, like a month later. I think that still fits into the definition of moderation, but it is much safer than if you were to do it at higher frequency, because I think the frequency is what starts to give you a problem.
Well, here's why I disagree. I think there are levels to this. I don't think all drugs are safe, even in moderation. Like, you take a wrong Molly or whatever the Percocet pill is, like people have died from that.
Yeah, which is why, by the way, you legalize, tax, and regulate. To her point, the big problem with the opioid crisis and people getting into fentanyl is that they are getting overprescribed prescription opioid drugs and painkillers, and then when they start to not being able to afford it, and this is the United States, of course, because our healthcare system is absolute dog shit. Once they get to that point, then they seek out alternative forms, and eventually you might find your way into some heroin, and then you get on a usual heroin habit, and you get pretty in the know of what your body can take and what, like, is a good high for you. But if you start running out of the good, not laced with anything heroin off the black market, you might get to another dealer or another person, and at that point, they might have cut their shit with fentanyl, which is like literally a horse tranquilizer. And if you do your normal heroin dose of that, you fucking die. Your heart stops beating and you die. That's the big problem. The way to get around that is to legalize, tax, and regulate. If you're getting everything from a doctor or from a safe and regulated source, the chances of you getting fentanyl or shit laced with other weird stuff is significantly lower. It's more than likely not going to happen. And at that point, you address this problem of people dying because of black market drugs. I think if she's anti-drug, and that's the way that she identifies in this argument, the prescription she might have would be, oh, that's why we need to keep prohibition in place of these drugs so that people can't get their hands on them. Problem with that line of thought is that people are going to get their hands on drugs anyway. If they have an addiction to it or the wants to get it, it's more than likely they'll be able to find it. You're just not going to get it from a safe source. But I guess we'll see where she goes with this.
I don't think all drugs are safe, even in moderation. Like, you take a wrong Molly or whatever the Percocet pill is, like, you know, like people have died from that. And that was technically in moderation. One pill, one day, life gone. You know, like, same thing with heroin. Like, that's something that could drastically change your life in a day.
The moderation part.
But I don't know if it's cut out, but if she doesn't get to some prescription as to solve this problem, it's very hard to take that line of argumentation seriously. Like, what do you propose that we do if you think that this problem with bad drugs or drugs that are laced with other shit, if you think this is actually a problem, banning this shit as it stands right now in the US doesn't solve the problem, it only exacerbates it. So where are you trying to go to fix it? I don't know if Jubilee would cut something like that out. So hopefully we get into that. But if we don't, then, you know, I don't know if you know too much about what you're trying to talk about, which is upsetting. Sup, friends? It's your boy Streamin' Conure. At least I was like 30 minutes ago. So I did have an announcement on some other videos about a 1,000 YouTube sub Q&A. We finally hit it. Very excited about that. Follow me at ConureCC if you want to find out more about the Q&A. I'll likely have a thread on there for you guys to leave questions on. It could be about anything you want, personal stuff, politics, video games, anything really. I will try to answer everything that I can, but if I can't do that because I lack the critical information or whatever, then, you know, I'm not going to do it. But if you give me a bunch of cool questions, we will answer them all in a video. I'll record the video live at twitch.tv/ConureCC. You can find it on my YouTube channel. Follow me on there. Put the bell on. Make sure the kids hear words. Join the Discord, conure.cc/Discord. You can be notified there as well. It's likely that I'll have another section for questions for the Q&A in that as well. If you're wondering why the setup is so scuffed, I just had a 5-hour stream where I basically just stole the content of another person but added my commentary on top of it in order to make it transformative and then thus my content. I also got a new personal best in a 4-year-old ROM hack of a 20-year-old game, Super Mario 64. That's pretty cool. Feel pretty good about that one. Anyway, stay tuned for the Q&A. Enjoy the video. Love you all.
The moderation part of it is tough because with pharmaceuticals, mainly to me, you mix two of those things, you're gone. And that's terrifying.
Yeah, and there are so many circumstances where it only takes one time to become physically dependent. Even in my case, I take prescription medication for sleeping. I hate that I'm on it, and I hate that I have to use it to function. If you don't have to absolutely do it, why do it?
Also, this guy hasn't said a goddamn word yet. I'm kind of interested to see what his takes are. This anti-drug, I'm interested in people and the way their brains work or whatever. Interested to see where we go with that kind of tip shit.
So what's the distinction for you between that and like ayahuasca, peyote, DMT, the different...
It's not necessary.
I think there's just a distinction that I'm gonna invite you to look at is like there is a difference between cocaine
Oh,
and
100%.
ayahuasca.
100%.
But what I'm saying is neither are necessary. My question to you is, are you saying to all the young people, like, you will not be able to open your mind fully unless you go and do this?
No, what I'm saying is that I hold everybody high and I hold everybody with the ability to think for themselves, but also going out and having an intentional, purposeful, responsible encounter with mushrooms or LSD supported me in getting over my addiction to marijuana and alcohol.
But the point being is the safety issue, and what you might have gotten in that moment when you took the drugs and it opened your mind and you were able to realize a lot of stuff, I think people should do on their own without the drugs.
But what, God, but what is your fucking prescription for this? Oh, God, like the safety issue. Oh, the safety issue. I highly doubt that these anti-drug people are going to be very receptive or sympathetic to the arguments that I've made previous. If you're so worried about the safety of people who are taking these drugs, I don't know what the anti-drug stance is, but the pro-drug stance is legalize, tax, and regulate. I don't know. It's really hard to take these anti-drug opinions seriously. A lot of anti-drug arguments feel like concern trolling? Maybe. I don't know that it's trolling, it's just like virtue signaling.
Drugs reduce people's potential.
Drugs reduce people's potential? They certainly can. I know that when I smoke weed, I become very unproductive, depending on the strain, I suppose. If I'm trying to get work done that day, then I'm not going to indulge. I think that's the big takeaway from that one. Drugs can reduce people's potential. They don't by and of themselves. Though a question like this certainly does. It's like easy bait for people with emotionally driven arguments in this topic.
I think even with psychedelic drugs, you know, to the point earlier, even if they are opening your mind up, that's really not your potential. That's not your potential. Your potential is the organic potential. And a lot of your organic...
You say your potential is the organic potential, but psilocybin mushrooms are an organic material that grow from the ground. I don't know.
Self is wonderful and it is marvelous. Take a little time to work and develop that muscle like a talent, then you will be able to reach your fullest potential.
And to that point as well, and I'm glad she brought it up, I would think that if you're having a problem with mindfulness, if you're having a problem with like trying to figure out your thoughts or how you feel about certain things, or like trying to really figure yourself out and do some introspection, I think meditation should be the first thing that you attempt to do as like a big commitment. And I would call an experience with ayahuasca or some other such drug or peyote like a big commitment, considering like usually if you're going to do this in the way that most people find a lot of value from, it's actually like going and having like an entire event out of it. So I think meditation should come first, and that is, I guess, to Key's point, an organic method, because it's just your brain and you're trying to become more mindful. So like you probably shouldn't use psychedelics as a way to like cheat yourself into mindfulness, I guess. But if you get there through them at that way and it's been productive and healthy for you, I don't see the argument against that. But I would say that meditation is probably the way to go initially.
A talent, then you will be able to reach your fullest potential.
When I got sober, I went back to school, which I never thought I would do. I worked 2 jobs, I started a small business. Like, I think of all of the people who are usually hypersensitive and end up getting into drugs because they can't deal with their emotions. And all of those people could be potentially adding to society, and they're not, because they're in their own world.
All right, let's see what these people have to say.
So I really don't feel that they harm people's potential. I think they help people gain their potential in a lot of different ways. And I mean, with cannabis alone, I mean, we have an endocannabinoid system within our body. I mean, it's one of our main receptors within our brain that it's like a lock and key for cannabis. We're made of the same materials. Our brain synthesizes those materials within it. So I really do feel that our potential isn't hindered by drugs. I mean, some, but totally, I can see some 100%, but overall, natural ones, not at all.
Kind of a shit take, I'm not gonna lie. Like I from the perspective of a pro-drug person talking to an anti-drug person, kind of a shit take. Scuffed Vosh really needs to get his head in the game.
Some of the most powerful people in the world right now in Silicon Valley and creating some of the most powerful startups are all microdosing.
Oh, totally.
2 years ago, I had my first
Oh
mushroom
shit!
experience.
Devin has talked for the first time. Devin has entered the battle, everybody. Good one, Devin.
2 years ago, I had my first mushroom experience. So I went into the woods, I went in nature, I set the intention, I'm gonna have this experience that I've never had before. It was a remarkable experience, and I felt a deeper truth within my connection to the earth, something I hadn't had in a long time. And it was kind of this reconnection with my spirituality.
I can relate to you because I also come from a very spiritual background. I think wherever that framework is for you, like if it's drugs, then that's for you. I think that's a dangerous path. I
really
also
like
think
that guy.
that for me, that
It's
thing
it's
is,
totally
I think
not
that's-
that I'm crushing on him or anything, but You know, I like him a lot. I like the way that he rattled off his entire fucking 17 names in quick succession and then said for the gringos it's JC. I like that. Is it just me, or does every single one of these thinly veiled progressive versus conservative videos has at least one person going, yeah, so I started a business, yeah. I did drugs once, then I started a business. I was anti-racist, then I started a business. I said trans rights once, then I started a business. Yeah, dude. I don't know. I don't know if starting a small business inherently means you're contributing to society. I think it really depends on what your small business is and the value people get out of it.
That's a dangerous path. I also think that for me, that thing is God. You know, like me having faith in God and a relationship with God, that is the opening to my spirituality. Like I don't need to take drugs to get there.
Have you done psychedelics?
Religion is my drug. Bless RNG, Angel Thump in chat. Imagine complaining about opening your mind organically and then citing religion. A completely man-made, what is the word, item, thing, idea, really makes you think.
A relationship with God, that is the opening to my spirituality. Like I don't need to take drugs to get there.
Have you done psychedelics?
No.
So it's like someone that hasn't had sex talking about white.
No,
sex.
it's not. That's not what it's like at all. Like, and but
How do you
because
know?
my
How do you know?
I would also say that this line of argumentation from Scuffed Latino Jesus is kind of bad as well, because this isn't going to convince anyone to be like, oh, well, have you done the drug? Have you done drug X? Well, then how could you possibly know? I don't know that that's his entire line of argumentation, but it certainly isn't very convincing. If anything, it would just make these people more set in their current belief system. If you follow that up with, oh, this was my experience, here's some potential data on other people in an aggregate's experience with drug X and the way that it has harmed or helped them, and then, you know, you go from there.
The thing is I don't need to know. That's my point. My point is
You don't need to know.
do you have a relationship with Christ? Have you spoken in tongues? That doesn't mean anything.
Well, the difference between have you done psychedelics and do you have a relationship with Christ is that the one thing is the psychedelics, like psilocybin mushrooms, literally come from the ground. Like, that's nature. Number two, God isn't real. It's man-made. So I think there's a fundamental disconnect between these two ideas. Also, yeah, dude, imagine being on psychedelics, looking like Jesus Christ, and also wearing a cross. Come on. This man is holy as shit.
That's a cross. That's not a relationship. They're
It's a
very
symbol,
different.
right?
Right.
God is more artificial than shrooms. Very true on Badev. I'm glad that you got that.
It's a relationship.
It's a cross. That is not a relationship. The two are very different. That's my point. So you don't have to ask me what I did not do. What I said was, and I'll repeat it,
We're very emotional right now.
my experience and my relationship with Christ, for me, that supersedes my desire to even go into that path, because I find myself very happy, very successful, I'm thriving within my being, and I don't need the substitute.
Yikes, dude. So first of all, her line of argumentation is kind of shite. But second of all, the way, I don't know what Scuffed Jesus had to say about that. Scuffed Latino Jesus, I don't know what he had to say about it. But we will never know, because Jubilee didn't keep it in if he did say anything to rebuke that. But I don't know, I'm really curious. I really am interested in this entire interaction, so I'm going to go through it again.
For me, that thing is God. You know, like me having faith in God and a relationship with God, that is the opening to my spirituality. Like I don't need to take drugs to get there.
So I will say, it is totally fine, as atheist or agnostic as I am, it is still totally okay if the way that you're able to achieve more mindfulness, if you're able to progress in life and better yourself is through religion, as if it gets you there in a productive way, it's totally fine. I am totally okay with that. But to address this point with that kind of argument, I don't know, maybe not the best.
Have you done psychedelics?
No.
So it's like someone that hasn't had sex talking about white.
Like, this
No,
is a
it's
really...
not.
So I think Scuffed Latino Jesus is just very emotional right now. This is not a good take from our boys on the pro-drug side, I have to say.
That's not what it's like at all. Like, but
How do you
because
know?
my
How do you know?
But the thing is I don't need to know. That's my point. My point is
You don't need to know.
Do you have a relationship with Christ? Have you spoken in tongues? That doesn't mean anything. That's a cross.
What? So instead of answering the question, do you have a relationship with Christ, Scuffed Latino Jesus holds up his crucifix, and I would assume that by him doing that, he's like, yeah, I likely wouldn't be wearing this if I didn't. So you are safe to assume that he does have a relationship with Christ, and he does follow a religion.
It's not a relationship. They're very
symbol,
different.
right?
It's
Right, it's a
it's a
relationship.
cross. That is not a relationship. The two are very different.
Like, what do you mean that's not a relationship? You don't even know. This dude hasn't spoken 2 words about any kind of potential way that he's like following or practicing religion. He only held up the crucifix as a way to show that he more than likely was. I don't know. Religion being an entirely emotional thing gets people really emotional. It makes sense.
That's my point. So you don't have to ask me what I did not do. What I said was, and I'll repeat it, my experience and my relationship with Christ, for me, that supersedes my desire to even go into that path, because I find myself very happy, very successful, I'm thriving within my being, and I don't need the substitute.
Yeah, so that's super cool. That is totally awesome. If that is the way that you have found the way forward for you in your life and it's been productive and it's been good, then that's totally fine. But the problem with this line of argumentation is the prompt was, do drugs hinder people's potential, or something along those lines. That is a very blanket prompt. I assume this prompt is addressing the whole of people. So to bring up an anecdote about how, well, I don't need a psychedelic experience to achieve what I've achieved, I've done that through spirituality and, in this case, Christ instead, this isn't really address the prompt at all. You're just saying like, oh, well, it's worked for me, so we should just not, so I'm going to be anti-drug because of that, because, religion has worked for me. It's not going to work for everybody. Just the same way that psychedelics won't work for you or you don't think you need them, religion is not going to work for everybody, and not everybody needs it. I don't know, like that entire interaction was kind of trash. Like, pro-drug didn't represent well at all. Very definitely the loser of that interaction in optics. And the argumentation from anti-drug was pretty fucking garbage, emotionally driven, and supported on a foundation of anecdotes. So, everybody lost in this debate today.
There is a lot of false information about recreational drugs.
Probably, yes. My initial take, where my tiny little brain goes to immediately, is people who juul or vape nicotine. Yeah, these questions are really fucking bad. People who vape nicotine are like, oh, well, the harmful things of the cigarette is cut out where I would usually get my nicotine, and it's through vaping instead, which has a lot less chemicals. The problem is nicotine is still incredibly physically addictive. I have always made the argument that it is easier to chain vape than it is to chain smoke, because cigarettes make you feel like shit, I'm pretty sure, if you smoke a whole bunch of them. But I think it's very easy because like you're actually combusting matter and you're breathing in actual smoke. I think water vapor is much easier for your body to take in larger doses. So it's a lot easier to fuck yourself up on nicotine and become incredibly physically dependent because it's easier to take it in. So I would say the false information in that regard is that, vaping is safer for you when it all depends on how you use it. The harmful effects of cigarettes are, of course, the carcinogens that are in it. Nobody can deny this. But like if you're smoking just straight up like tobacco, like very organic, no added disgusting rat poison, fucking formaldehyde, all this kind of nonsense, it's definitely better than smoking like commercial cigarettes. But obviously, the physical health issue would be the combustion of the material that you're bringing into your lungs. That should never go in your lungs in the first place. And then the second being water vapor is much better for you, but also shouldn't necessarily go in your lungs either. As far as like cannabis is concerned, there are real concerns with recreational cannabis use, especially for people who are younger. If you're getting into like a really big cannabis habit, which is typically the case, not everybody is an ascendant 5-head like me who microdoses the shit. A lot of people start smoking weed socially, and in that situation, a lot of the times it would seem that you're usually egged on to smoke more and more, and like people try to outsmoke each other, like, oh, let's get so fucking high, dude. Let's get real fucked up, man. That kind of that kind of a culture is really fucked if you're very young, because it does have real impacts to your brain because it's still developing, which is why if it's to be federally legalized, I think what is slated to be the age cutoff is 21 before you're able to purchase it. So to think like, oh, cannabis can't be bad for you, blah, 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 is not true either from the pro-drug stance.
So everyone agrees.
No
one knows nothing.
Let's get informed.
Let's get informed. That's why we're here.
That's not why we're here. He said, let's get informed. She says, that's why we're here. You don't go to Jubilee and you don't talk shit as like a normie to get informed. This is just, optics, fun stuff.
On the culture, the perception. And I'm strictly talking about marijuana, but at one point in history, it was also used for medicine. It was used for religion. It was used for, for hemp was used for a variety of things. And there's people that don't know that. It's a part of our history. So when I think about how ill-informed people are, that's one of the main things.
But the truth is, do I really want all of the information? I'll be honest, no, I don't. I don't really need it. I agree.
Imagine my shock that a religious person doesn't want all the information. Imagine my shock that a religious person is, in this specific context, anti-intellectual. Kind of curious. I don't think that I could have predicted this. This is way out of left field. So I guess if she's saying that she personally doesn't want all the information because she has bettered her life through religion or whatever, that's, I guess, fine if you don't want the information because you don't think you necessarily need it. But if you're extending that line of argumentation to the whole of the human population doesn't need that information, I don't think that that's her point, and I would really hope that that's not her point. But if it is, that is a very, very cancerous point. That's more cancerous than people who fucking chain smoke cigarettes. You need, more information is always better, especially in the context of things like drugs that directly impact people's lives.
Yeah, I walked over for the same thing. I try and keep an open mind at all times and realize that a wise man knows that he knows nothing. And so, especially with cannabis and that, I'm aware and have researched, cannabis oils and taken CBD myself, and I am interested in, as someone who takes pharmaceutical medication, as cannabis as an alternative, but my perspective in, once again, versus recreational versus, I would consider that, for me, medical use.
There's a great deal of misinformation. Just like the pharmaceutical, we have all these things that are getting pumped into our homes all the time with all of these side effects and side effects and side effects. More than half the commercial is all side effects. But yet it's telling you it's okay to take that. It's cool to take that. Yeah, it can probably kill you. Exactly. But it's okay to take that. But you can't take these other. Yeah. Take this one and take this one. But don't take this thing over here that can actually help you.
Exactly. And
I
agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and I think that's because
That is an interesting point as well. There's a lot of disinformation. There's literally people whose job it is to pump out disinformation about pharmaceutical drugs in order to increase sales and increase the profit margin. That kind of disinformation, that kind of lack of information is much, much more detrimental than people assuming certain things about things that aren't necessarily true. Because this is a supposed authority on the topic, actively misleading you. That is very heinous. Especially for profit, for money. It's trash.
Yeah, and I think that's because there are people that benefit from our, us not being literate about this subject.
But I have to realize why we're here for this video is pushing information and for recreational drug purposes and the misinformation, but I think that it takes a lot more education and usually a really bad circumstance for you to want to change around your life and be fuck, what am I doing? There has to be more than this, but most people never get uncomfortable enough to need to make that realization. And so I'm just not gonna push it because I just think that it's gonna end up way more negative, unfortunately.
This has been an absolute
Inform the people!
Yikes. This has been an absolute dog shit video. An absolute dog shit yikes. Big oof, all of the memes, weird champ in chat. This was a trash video. What the fuck was this? Oh, we're trying to inform everybody. Inform the people. Good job, Jubilee. You have really just completely muddied the waters and done nothing. What the fuck? Oh, God. Thanks so much for watching. Like if you like, sub to get into the club, and for the love of God, clap that bell's cheeks. Follow me on Twitter and Twitch at ConyreCC. Check out my patreon.com/ConyreCC. Join my Discord, conure.cc/Discord. You don't know how much I appreciate your support. To the right of me is the link to subscribe to the channel, and to the right of that is even more videos for you to watch. Love y'all very much.